Your body has a mind of its own. It's running this ancient survival program, right? One designed to save you from a saber-toothed tiger. But now it gets triggered by a work email, and suddenly you're in a full-blown panic for reasons your logical brain just can't figure out. So what happens when your oldest protector, this system designed to keep you alive, becomes your betrayer? When it traps you in a past that your conscious mind knows for a fact is over. Okay, let's dive into this, because what we're talking about today is this deep biological civil war. And this story, it's not just about trauma. It's the story of how your own body can literally hijack your reality. And this quote just nails the central paradox. It's from one of the world's leading trauma researchers, Dr. Bessel van der Kolk. See, for millions of people, the past isn't just a memory you think about. It's a physical reality. It's a constant, gnawing, internal alarm bell that just won't shut off. The body, as he famously says, is keeping a score that your mind just can't erase. So that's the big question, right? The one we're going to tear apart today. How is it possible that you can look around, see with your own eyes that there is no danger, know it in your head, but your body is screaming that you're about to die? This gap, this chasm between what your rational brain knows and what your nervous system feels, well, that's the territory we're about to map. To make this really hit home, let me tell you about a woman named Maya. She is brilliant, analytically sharp, emotionally self-aware, and she's just walking down a completely normal, sterile hospital hallway. Objectively, there is no threat, nobody's chasing her, nothing is wrong. And yet, her heart is pounding out of her chest, her palms are slick with sweat, and every muscle in her body is coiled, ready for a fight for its life. See, the thing is, Maya has done the work. She's been to therapy, she can tell you with perfect clarity all about her difficult childhood. She knows the danger is over. But her body doesn't know. Her nervous system has completely hijacked her reality. It's reacting to a totally benign present-day stimulus as if a past horror is happening all over again, right now. Her rational brain is just a passenger in a car being driven by these ancient, terrified instincts. And that profound, confusing disconnect, that's the day-to-day lived experience of trauma. So here's the crucial reframing based on Dr. van der Kolk's work. Trauma isn't the bad thing that happened to you. It's the physiological injury that the bad thing left behind. It's the way your brain and your nervous system literally got rewired and are now stuck in a state of permanent high alert, as if the terrible event is just perpetually unfolding. Trauma, at its core, is a wound to your biology. Now, this understanding didn't just pop up out of nowhere. It really started to crystallize back in the 1970s. Dr. van der Kolk was working with Vietnam veterans, and he noticed something profound. These men weren't just haunted by bad memories, their bodies were physically reliving them. A car backfiring on a quiet street wasn't just a sound. For them, it was incoming fire. They would start sweating, their hearts would race, their muscles would tense up for a fight that was actually happening 2 decades in the past on a different continent. Their bodies were just flooded with adrenaline, their nervous systems totally unable to tell the difference between a Boston suburb and a battlefield. This observation kicked off decades of research, leading to his groundbreaking book and, now, the hard neuroscientific proof of what he witnessed all those years ago. Trauma physically changes the brain. So, how does this whole biological betrayal actually work? I mean, what are the mechanics of it? To get that, we need to pop the hood and look at the ancient survival code that's running in the background of your every single moment. This is the operating system that was designed from the ground up to save your life. For pretty much all of human history, the threats we faced were immediate. They were physical. A predator hiding in the tall grass, a rival tribe coming over the hill. Staying alive meant you had to react instantly, without thinking. So your brain evolved this incredibly sophisticated, multi-layered blueprint for exactly that purpose. It's an absolute masterpiece of evolutionary design for a world that, let's be honest, mostly doesn't exist anymore. Okay, so the first line of defense in this blueprint is a little almond-shaped part of your brain called the amygdala. And Dr. van der Kolk has this brilliant analogy for it. He calls it the brain's smoke detector. Its one and only job is to scan the environment for danger. And it is ridiculously fast. It takes in sensory data, a sound, a smell, a weird look on someone's face, and can trigger a full-body threat response before your rational brain, your prefrontal cortex, even gets the memo that something is happening. Now, in trauma, this smoke detector becomes hypersensitive. It starts sounding the alarm not just for a real fire, but for a tiny whiff of smoke, or sometimes just the memory of smoke. And that's why a totally harmless sound or smell can trigger a massive panic attack in a trauma survivor. The alarm system is just permanently stuck on its most sensitive setting. When that smoke detector goes off, it launches a 2-wave assault. The first wave is practically instant. We're talking milliseconds.
The amygdala screams at the sympathetic nervous system, which floods your body with adrenaline. Your heart rate skyrockets, your pupils dilate, blood shoots to your major muscles. This is that classic fight-or-flight response, getting you ready for immediate explosive action. Then, a few minutes later, the second, slower wave rolls in. The brain kicks on a network called the HPA axis, which releases the hormone cortisol. Its job is to keep your whole system on high alert for a much longer, more sustained conflict.
So let's just lay this out side by side, because the contrast is really what matters here. You've got two different systems working together. The sympathetic nervous system is like an electrical switch. Boom, instant power for a quick sprint. The HPA axis, which is hormonal, is more like a dimmer switch, slowly dialing up the body's alert level and then keeping it there. So adrenaline is for the initial escape. Cortisol is for surviving the long haul. Now, in a healthy response, both of these systems shut down once the danger is gone. But in trauma, they can get stuck in the on position, just burning you out.
All right, now here is where it gets really wild. This is probably one of the most crucial and kind of shocking facts about this whole process. When that survival blueprint gets activated, the smartest, most rational part of you, the part of your brain that really makes you you, is deliberately taken offline. The system is designed to prioritize speed over accuracy, even if it means you literally can't think straight. So let's break down exactly how this hijack goes down. That cortisol, the main stress hormone from the slow wave, it isn't just a gas pedal, it's also a brake pedal for your rational mind. It chemically suppresses the activity in your prefrontal cortex. This is why when Maya is walking down that hospital corridor, her ability to think about next week just evaporates. Her brain can only see the threat that's right here, right now. Her thinking gets super rigid, what they call cognitive tunnel vision. She can't see the big picture, only the potential danger. It all ends in what the psychologist Daniel Goleman famously called an amygdala hijacked. Your emotional, reactive brain just completely takes over the controls. You literally cannot think your way out of it. And here is the fundamental problem of modern life, explained perfectly by the brilliant neurobiologist Dr. Robert Sapolsky. A zebra sees a lion, its stress response fires, it runs like crazy, the lion gives up, and 5 minutes later, the zebra is peacefully grazing again. The system turns off. But us humans, we're different. Our stressors are usually psychological, not a lion. It's a toxic boss, a messy divorce, financial pressure. These threats can go on for months or even years. Our ancient fight-or-flight system was never designed for that kind of chronic, nonstop activation. This prolonged state of emergency just destroys our bodies, leading to everything from heart disease to immune system collapse. We are basically marinating in our own stress hormones, and the biological price we pay is enormous. But wait. The physical survival wire, that's only half the story. The blueprint has a second, equally powerful function, one that governs our social lives with the same life or death urgency. This is what we can call the social survival wire. So let me ask you a question. When you boil it all down to pure biology, what is the single most terrifying message your brain can send to the rest of your body? It's not a predator is here. It's not even we're injured. It's something much, much more fundamental to our species. You are alone here. According to a ton of biological research, this is one of the worst things your nervous system can possibly communicate. This one message triggers a state of absolute physiological panic. Why? Because for our ancient ancestors, that message was a death sentence. I mean, just think about it from an evolutionary standpoint. For hundreds of thousands of years, a human on their own was a dead human. It's that simple. Your survival depended completely on the group for protection, for finding food, for shelter. Getting banished from the tribe wasn't a social faux pas, it was a near certain execution by starvation or predator. So our brains evolved to treat social rejection as a 5-alarm existential emergency. And this is not some fluffy metaphor, okay? This chart shows something wild that modern neuroscience has proven. Using fMRI brain scans, researchers discovered that when you experience social exclusion, like being ostracized or rejected by a group, it activates the exact same region of your brain, the anterior cingulate cortex, that lights up when you experience physical pain. Your brain literally does not distinguish between a broken arm and a broken heart. The pain of being cast out is real, it is physical, and it is a survival signal. Now, you take that ancient wiring and you drop it into our modern world, and you get what some experts are calling a crisis of belonging. Widespread loneliness and social isolation are literally putting our bodies into that same state of chronic fight or flight we talked about. Feeling like you don't belong isn't just a sad thought, it's a physiological stress state. Study after study links it to chronic inflammation, which is a gateway to almost every major disease. It's linked to heart disease, dementia. It even makes people more vulnerable to extremist groups, because those groups offer a powerful, even if it's toxic, sense of belonging. Our primal need for connection is a biological imperative, and when we ignore it, the consequences can be lethal. Okay, so let's recap. We have a survival blueprint that can hijack our rational brain, and we have a social wire that treats being excluded like a mortal wound. These systems are powerful, they're ancient, and they're mostly involuntary. So, what happens when someone figures out how to pull those levers on purpose? This is where we enter the territory of the dark blueprint, where our own survival instincts are weaponized against us. This is the domain of what's known as dark psychology, and it's not some kind of mystical, evil art. It's the clinical, calculated use of social psychology and behavioral science with one single goal: to manipulate and control another person by exploiting their most basic, hardwired psychological vulnerabilities. It takes all the normal tools of human connection, rapport, influence, trust, and it flips them, turning them from tools of community into weapons of control. And these tactics, man, they are precision engineered to hit the weak spots in our survival blueprint. Gaslighting? It chips away at your sense of reality until you doubt your own mind, forcing you to depend on the manipulator to tell you what's real. Love bombing creates this intense, addictive feeling of perfect belonging, which is then pulled away to make you desperate for their approval. Fear appeals are a direct hotline to your amygdala, creating a sense of emergency that shuts down rational thought. Scarcity triggers our primal fear of losing a resource, forcing us into impulsive decisions. And social proof manipulation plays on our deep need to be part of the tribe, making us terrified of being the odd one out. So, you might be wondering, where is the line? I mean, what's the difference between good faith persuasion and dark manipulation? The Australian Data-Driven Marketing Association, or ADMA, has this really simple but powerful framework. Ethical persuasion is transparent, and it's aiming for a win-win. Manipulation, on the other hand, is deceptive. It tricks someone into doing something that is not in their best interest. And they offer the ultimate acid test, what they call the mum test. Would you be okay with your own mother being subjected to this tactic? If the answer is no, you've crossed the line. It's that simple. And this stuff has real-world consequences. It's not just theory. Research from the customer platform Dovetail shows that more than half of us have lost trust in a website or a social media platform specifically because of these kinds of manipulative tactics. In the long run, manipulation just corrodes the very foundation of trust that everything, brands, institutions, society itself, needs to function. Those short-term gains are almost never worth the long-term damage. So after all that, after exploring this dark side, the really important question becomes one of control. If our brains can be wired for threat by trauma and hijacked by manipulation, can they be rewired back towards safety and freedom? The answer from neuroscience is, thankfully, a resounding yes. This is the path to reclaiming the blueprint. This is really the great hope offered by the science of neuroplasticity. The incredible ability of the brain to reorganize itself, to form new neural connections all throughout our lives. Trauma might create these deep, well-worn grooves in our brain, but it does not have to be a life sentence. The brain can actually learn safety again. The real question is, how? Now, Dr. van der Kolk argues that one of the biggest mistakes we've made in treating trauma has been relying way too much on what he calls top-down approaches. This is your traditional talk therapy. It engages your rational brain, your prefrontal cortex, to try and think your way out of the problem. And while that's valuable, it's often not enough, because trauma doesn't live in the rational brain. It lives in the survival brain. It lives in the body. That's why bottom-up healing is so essential. These are therapies that start with the body, things like yoga, breathwork, specific therapies like EMDR or somatic experiencing that are designed to directly calm the nervous system's alarm bell. The core idea here is revolutionary for a lot of people. You cannot think your way out of a problem that your body doesn't believe is over. You have to settle the body first to then heal the mind. And if you want to see these principles in action in the real world, there is maybe no more powerful modern example than the miraculous Thai cave rescue back in 2018. You remember this. 12 boys from a youth soccer team and their coach that go exploring a cave, monsoon rains come, flood the entrance, and trap them deep inside for 18 terrifying days in total darkness, with food and oxygen running out. I mean, it was a situation that was primed for absolute panic and total psychological collapse. And yet, when the divers finally found them, they were remarkably calm. So how did they do it? How did they endure something that should have broken them?
Well, psychologists point to three key protective factors that map directly onto our survival blueprint. First, social connection. They were a team. They already had strong bonds, which acted as a buffer against the terror of being isolated. Second, they had a trusted adult leader. Their coach, who happened to be a former Buddhist monk, provided a sense of safety and authority. And third, and this is the most crucial part, was the bottom-up strategy he used. He taught the boys meditation and mindfulness techniques to regulate their own nervous systems, to calm their fight-or-flight responses directly at the source.
And this wasn't just a feel-good story. Trauma experts like Ellen R. DeVoe from Boston University were absolutely fascinated by this case. It was like a real-world experiment, demonstrating what the science had already been suggesting. It was a profound example of how mindfulness can be used to directly regulate the nervous system, even under the most extreme conditions you can imagine. It proved that resilience isn't just something you're born with, it's a skill that can actually be taught.
So, pulling from the work of people like Dr. Van de Kolk and from incredible stories like the Thai rescue, what are the actual steps to settle the score in our own lives? Well, first, finding safety. And I don't just mean knowing you're safe, but actually helping your body feel safe. Second, restoring connection. Engaging with people who help your nervous system feel calm, what's known as co-regulation. Third, engaging the body through those bottom-up practices. And finally, and this one is so important, being patient. This is not a quick fix. Rewiring a nervous system is a gradual process. There are often 2 steps forward and 1 step back. It's the slow, steady work of the body finally being able to release all that stored-up energy of survival.
The ultimate message here, really, is one of profound hope. This survival blueprint, as powerful as it is, it's not your destiny. It's not a fixed sentence. It's a system that can be understood, that can be managed, and can even be reshaped by learning its rules, how it reacts to threats, its deep need for connection, its vulnerabilities. You gain the power to influence it. Understanding the blueprint is the first and most critical step toward reclaiming it. And that leaves us with a final and pretty personal question. Our ancient biology is always going to be with us. That smoke detector will always be there. The need to belong will always be a powerful force. But with this new understanding, you are no longer just a passive passenger. You can learn to work with your biology, to soothe the alarm, to build safety, and to recognize when your own instincts are being twisted against you. So the question is, will you be the blueprint's master, or will you be its servant?